computer. Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Art of Braids podcast. I'm your host, Karen Tenard, and I'm excited about today's guest. Like when we talk about press, I'm over here interviewing, but the person who is on the other end of this is very connected to the topic of today. And the topic is, how does one get prepared or prepare themselves for press? And today's guest is Miss Zawadi Morris, founder of the amazing media company. If you're from Brooklyn, it is Brooklyn Reader. And since today's topic is about how does one prepare for press, who better to talk about it? I remember doing my soft launch years ago, I think in 2019, and I had someone kind of like find their way to my space and do this magazine press cover, but it didn't feel like real press. And I wrote it completely up myself, and it was kind of weird. But when I did the ribbon cutting with NY Beauty Suites, I was it was just like, oh, you want to write a story about it? Like, oh, and I was like, BK Rita. I was like, I hear about BK Rita. So it was like an honor not only to be in the press, but to be recognized by my community of, my borough. And I like rep Brooklyn all the time. So it's like, oh, you get a stamp of approval from BK Rita, and then meeting Zawadi, it was just kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm here for it. And it was a no-brainer. It wasn't like, okay, like, yeah, um, this press, but it's like, no. So I'm not gonna make the audience wait too long anymore, but I want to say thank you, Zawadi, for agreeing to be interviewed by me and just kind of like sharing your story about press. And I mean, I know a little bit about you. I don't know a lot, but I know a little bit more than my audience, I think. So I would love for you to kind of like tell um, your story and a little bit about what you do in your company, your business.
Okay. Well, thanks, first of all, Karen, for inviting me to share with your audience and being interested in me. I understand the feeling when someone is asked to be interviewed because, we all are out here working hard. We're all humping. And a lot of times that's not recognized. And a lot of times people want to focus on those who are huge successes and not those that are really out there grinding. And that's always been my goal is to identify people in our community who are putting in the work, who are being creative, who are being their beautiful Black self, and sticking to those things that feed them. That's very brave to do that. We can all make certain decisions, and sometimes we are forced to take jobs and work if we're mothers or we have huge responsibilities, but it's always important to me to highlight those folks who are brave, that follow their dreams and live through their creativity. And that's why I recognized you. So thank you for recognizing me.
You're welcome.
So you know that I am the founder of BK Reader and the Brooklyn Reader. It started out as the Brooklyn Reader. I changed it to BK Reader later because everybody kept calling it BK Reader. My address, the HTML address, the website is bkreader.com. That's probably one of the reasons why people started calling it BK Reader. So if you're looking for daily news, you're in Brooklyn or even outside of Brooklyn and interested in Brooklyn, please check out bkreader.com. We have a newsletter and go to it. It's a daily news site, and I launched it in 2013. So this year we make 10 years. And it's something that has been a soul search for me, and it's been part of my lifelong dream to do. As far as my backstory, I seriously have a backstory that goes back to when I was, 8, 9 years old. The reason why I got into this, what I'm doing now. I'm originally from Chicago, And so my family in I'm about to age myself here, but my family in the late 70s was one of the first that was chosen, one out of 10 families that were chosen at that time to participate in a program that was an experiment. They wanted to see if they moved families from the projects into wealthy suburbs, if that would change the trajectory of their lives. At the time, I was so young that I didn't know that it was part of an experiment. I didn't know it was a program. All I knew is that I went from me and my two sisters and my mom, who was a single mother, went from living in the projects and, living around, living that project life, fighting on the way to school, fighting on the way back from school, hanging out with your girlfriends and doing cheers on the street and going down the street to get to the candy lady and just that life, and when you're living that life, you don't necessarily feel that it is hard when you're young because it's all you know. But that was my life. And then it suddenly changed. My mother picked us up and moved us to the suburbs. First time I seen anything like that in my life, where it was just like rolling green grass everywhere. All the homes were intact, and it was all white faces, which was the biggest shock that came to us. It really looked like the scene snatched out of the Brady Bunch, if you've ever seen any episodes of that. And the parks were huge, and all the swings were still attached. Because where I came from, no swings were attached. It was just the chains hanging there, and the slides were all bent and broken up, and everything was broken up. And here everything was beautiful and intact. So my family living out there, we were the first Black family in that entire town for miles and miles and miles. And so we ended up integrating that suburb of Chicago. And my family, we were still on welfare when we moved out there. Things were really harsh. We experienced a lot of racism, but my mother couldn't afford a babysitter. So she decided to go back to college and would leave us in the college library because she could not afford a babysitter. And so what ended up happening is that my sister and I, being bored and upset that we were left in the library, of course, started reading books. And that's where I developed my love of reading. And between, the three of us, we would rip through those books, and just every day we were reading a new book. And we just became engulfed in life. I mean, it was almost a sociological study. We were reading about everything from, like, spiders, National Geographic books, other countries, and then of course the young books by Judy Blume and Beverly Cleary and Roald Dahl. All those books opened my mind and expanded me to another life and existence, and made me very, very curious about life beyond what I was experiencing. But one thing that I had noticed from the books is that I didn't see any stories about me. I didn't see any faces that sounded like me. I didn't see any stories that resonated with me. They opened me up to new stories, but they weren't my story, and it was unsettling to me. I was like, where am I? Where am I in history? Where am I in life, in America, in society? And so, between that feeling that I was erased, and then also going to school and being the only Black child, I used to complain to my mother I wanted to go back home, which was Chicago. And her response was, we're not leaving. This is an opportunity that, that's rare. We're living in a really wealthy suburb. Even though we're poor, we have subsidized housing. She's like, we're not leaving, so you're going to have to find a way to cope. And so she suggested I start writing. And I rejected that suggestion initially, because I was like, how is that going to help me in school make friends? How is that going to help me do anything by writing? It's just boring. But I think she bought me a little diary, and I think after maybe a month or two, I was like, all right. I started writing, and surprising myself, I loved it. Also surprising myself, I was very good at it. I had a lot of thoughts. And so that summer, I remember a particular summer, I think I might have turned 10 years old. She let me use her typewriter. Yes, I'm dating myself again. And I wrote a book for the entire summer. I wrote every day, got up in the morning, couldn't wait to write, continue writing. I literally was typing on a typewriter every single day, the entire summer, and produced what came out to be something like 17 pages, a book typewritten, and my mom got it bound for me. And that was the beginning of my life as I knew it as a writer and as someone who was telling another story that other people didn't hear or have. And so living in the suburbs and experiencing the type of racism that we experienced, my sister and I, just walking to school, cars would pass by and just be yelling nigger, nigger, nigger to us. The friends that we tried to make, their parents didn't want them to be friends with us, and we couldn't go to their homes. Just all these things, I continued to write about them. And I told myself that, when I get the opportunity, I'm going to tell other people's stories, because I had a whole family in Chicago that was amazing. I had aunts and uncles and cousins that were doing amazing things, that were extremely bright, were so talented. And I saw my Black community as being this rich resource and comforting, loving resource. And again, we were absent. And then I turn around, come to the suburbs. We go and visit my relatives on the weekends and come back to the suburbs and just feel a lot of coldness and isolation. And so I was like, who's telling the rest of our stories? And so I continued writing, through grammar school. I always got great grades in English. And then throughout high school, I was an automatic A. I got my two automatic A's were going to be three, actually. We're going to be music, writing, and gym. And so, but writing was always something that came easy to me and something that I loved. Still, even as I went on to college, it wasn't something that I saw as anything beyond just something I did, but not as a career. So I got a degree in business and a second degree in Spanish. And when it was time for me to consider graduate school, I was trying to decide, do I want to become, because I had taken a couple of languages, do I want to become an international consulate officer or an ambassador or a business person? What do I want to do? And, I remember a professor stopping me and saying, Zawadi, all of no matter, I was in one of my history classes, and he would say, no matter what grade I gave you, your writing was always excellent. Why don't you go into writing? You can do all those things, speak other languages and travel as a writer as well. And it was something I never considered as a career. And then at that point it hit me, Eureka, yeah, I should be a reporter. And so from there I went to grad school I went to Northwestern Medill School of Journalism, and concentrated in international and public affairs reporting. And during grad school, again, I was given assignments to cover the rougher parts of the neighborhoods around Chicago. It's interesting to me now when I look back at how my professors directed me in a certain, place. I didn't push back against it, because these neighborhoods were my home in many ways. So I wasn't afraid to go and report in them. But what they would give me were assignments that had to do with crime and or sports and entertainment. So and I was like, but wait a minute, we have a whole life. We have Black community has a whole full ass life. We've got so much culture, we've got so much richness. And why are we focused on crime? Why are we focused on entertainment? Yeah, we're great entertainers and we're very talented, but like we're doing so many more things than this. And I said to myself again, I was like, if I ever get the opportunity, when I graduate, I'm going to ask my editors to sign me the stories, that I can tell that aren't being told. And so fast forward about 20 years later, in 2013, I launched BK Reader. And BK Reader, like I said, is a daily news site. I launched in the 4 communities in Brooklyn that I felt were most underrepresented and underserved, and where most of the reporting was just crime. And so I launched in Bed-Stuy, Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, and Crown Heights. And then after a couple of more years, I expanded our coverage to Brownsville, East New York, and Flatbush. And then after that, I expanded some more to Prospect Heights and Bushwick and parts of Williamsburg. And 3 years ago, we expanded to the rest of Brooklyn. So we now cover all the neighborhoods all across Brooklyn, but with a concentration in central Brooklyn where, again, there's underserved and underrepresented communities. My entire goal was to model what news equity looks like. And when I say what that looks like, it means not opening the paper and seeing stories about Black people that are focused on crime. It means being able to read about the gold and diamonds that are uncovered in our communities, being able to hear the voices that are so often muted. And then I also wanted to change the relationship that our community had with news. The thing that I noticed was that at growing up, my family wasn't a heavy news watcher, and neither were most of the people in my community, the Black community. We didn't really engage with news like that. Oftentimes we were like, oh, it's too depressing. And so I realized that we have this raw relationship with news. And the reason why is because we feel like a target. It doesn't make us feel good when we read news. It makes us feel like, you know, our role in society is one that is, you know, wretched and wrought and sad and, you know, always fighting. And I'm like, we're so much more than that. And when we're seeing those pictures, those depictions and those stories fed to us, it's like looking in a mirror and seeing the worst version of yourself. And I knew that we were beautiful people, and I wanted to show a better version and um showcase the voices that we often don't hear and the stories we often don't hear. And so that's what my goal is with BK Reader. Is we cover everybody in Brooklyn. However, my underlying and most you know, the biggest goal I have throughout all of this is to make sure that our voices are integrated equally and substantially and in a robust and rounded manner, and that we can see ourselves and change our relationship with news, see ourselves a more accurate picture of ourselves, you know, as the beautiful community and hardworking community that we are.
Well, thank you, because that, like, I was like being inspired the whole time. I'm listening to you, like, yeah, and it's just like so many connections. So thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm pretty sure the listeners is like, yes, I hear myself in that. Like just having that the connection and the relatability of like wanting to tell your story and tell other people's story. It's funny because I was at this crossroad after business school. Like I mean, after getting my business degree, where I was just sitting there like, do I go to like God, where do you want me to go? Beauty school or um graduate school of journalism? And
Oh,
yes, like so I was just when you was telling your story, I'm like, it was similar, but something so I end up getting like reached out by this anonymous. I gotta tell you, my resume said nothing about doing hair, nothing. Like it was like just looking for a job. A temp agency reached out to me and I was like, okay, I went in. I was like, it's not a scam. I researched. I was there like, okay, Michael Page. Da, da, da. And they were like, okay, your resume looks good. I'm gonna set you up, but it's a hair company. And I was like,
get out of here.
yeah, nothing on my resume says hair. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, okay, God, I hear you. I,
Uh-huh.
so I told the lady, I was like, actually, I do my own hair. I do hair. Like I've been doing it since I was 11. And she was like, oh my God, that needs to be on your resume. But I got the job. And it was just like, that was my pivot where I didn't go to school of graduate school of journalism, but I went to beauty school and
Uh-huh.
look where that led me. Like, you know,
Yeah.
to the hair, the braids and things like that. So it's funny how God answers our like prayer and puts us in places like even with the uncomfortability of where you were in the suburbs,
Yeah.
birth your writing and your passion for telling stories and the reader. So I was like listening to how you were saying uh you loved reading and then I'm like, "Oh, is that where the name reader came from? Like the BK reader as far as being a reader." So I was like, "Huh."
You know what? That's interesting. I the BK Reader actually was supposed to be the Brooklyn Reporter. The Brooklyn Reader was actually supposed to be the Brooklyn Reporter. And before I launched, I did like a 6 month campaign of I printed up cards and I went around telling people the Brooklyn Reporter is going to launch. You know, I had it on my little marketing cards, was handing it out in 2013, telling different people, even had it on my business cards, you know, tell people this is going to launch in the neighborhood. And but every time I referred to it, I kept saying the Brooklyn Reader is going to launch. And they'd look at the card, they're like, wait a minute, the Brooklyn Reporter or the Brooklyn Reader? I was like, I mean, the Brooklyn Reporter. I did that so many times called it the Brooklyn Reader when it's supposed to be the Brooklyn Reporter, that finally somebody said, listen, Zawadi, I think the name of your business is supposed to be the Brooklyn Reader, because you keep saying it. They're like, I know you picked the Brooklyn Reporter and you printed up all these cards, but I have a feeling it's supposed to be the Brooklyn Reader. And I was like, dang it. I was like, you might be right. So I ended up having a reprint and then started all over and called it the Brooklyn Reader. And for some reason, it was just in my head that it was the Brooklyn Reader. And that's how the name came about. I have no idea where it came from. I thought the Brooklyn Reporter was a dope name, and I was sure that was it. But every time I spoke about my business, I called it the Brooklyn Reader.
Higher self, that was God communicating, just like
Yes.
your higher self is like, it's reader.
His reader.
Like, that's really good, especially for anyone listening to like understand, like, you might have spent money on something, but if it's not right, if it doesn't make sense to you, or it's like it's not rolling off your tongue, like you like I can't say Brooklyn Reporter, like it's not catchy enough, and
It's
it's
right.
it's not in your heart, then you might just have to take the little step back, and start over, but it's okay, you
It's
know.
okay. That's an excellent, excellent anecdote. It's a great observation, and it's true. It applies across the board when we're making decisions about our lives, to really move with your heart. And it's okay sometimes if you've moved in another direction for a while and invested time and money, but you really need to move with your heart, because your heart, your soul center is telling you something different. You're receiving messages from the universe that's telling you something different, whether it be the name of your company or even what you're doing in life, and what you're creating. You have to listen to your inner ear. And I can't imagine my business today being called the Brooklyn Reporter. I just can't.
It would be so like completely different, and probably would also read different, like to different people, like how you would set up your questions and who you would speak to, like it probably would shape it a little bit differently. So
Mm.
BK Rita is like, it's it. That's and it's okay to keep evolving, because it went from Brooklyn Rita to BK Rita.
Yep.
So it's evolution. Uh,
Yep.
okay, so let's get into the topic at hand, which is how does one prepare for press? I don't think I was prepared when I did your press, but I was like, you know what? It who you assigned me was a super good. But this question is for you. What are some best practices for braiders to prepare for press interviews?
Okay, so first of all, the very first thing you need to do is work on your bio. You need to have your story told in two ways. You need two bios. You need the longer bio, which is one page, which is about 500 words, that tells a little bit of your story, shows your personality, even talks about some of your hobbies and things that you like to do. And then you need an abbreviated bio, which is about 250 words. 200 to 250 words, which is the shortened version of that. So that exercise of creating your bio is really important, because you have to be and choosing what it is that you want to put yourself out there to be. So there's two ways that you exert yourself in this life, in this universe, and that's through speaking and that's through writing. So what you put down on paper becomes, in a sense, who you are in this world. And that can change. Again, that can change every year. You might want to update it, but your bio is going to set forth the beginning of what you want your identity to be. And it's also going to make you begin to think about, this is more important for me to mention than that. I want to mention that I graduated from these schools, these awards I received. This person was my inspiration. This job changed my life. And I was recognized in this, particular society. I also volunteer and do this kind of work. And these are my skill sets. So your bio is the best practice. First and foremost, don't have someone write it yourself. Have a writer edit it for you to fix it up nicely, but you should write it yourself. That's the first very big step. And a lot of what's going to be in your bio is going to be asked of you anyway. So that's going to be the reference point for an interview. is what's in your bio. They're going to look at your bio and they're going to base, many of their questions off of what's in there. And so it's a preparation, almost a pre-prep for any interview that you're going to have. The second thing that you want to do is consider the outlet. I can't tell you how many times people have reached out to BK Reader and sent a press release because they want to be covered for what they're doing, and either their the subject matter or the organization or whatever their activity is doesn't match what we do, because they're sending out blind press releases. They'll say, oh, this thing is happening in Harlem at 2 o'clock. I got a few this week about some things happening in Harlem. I was like, you need to take the time to research the outlet and see that we are Brooklyn local. And you didn't do that. You just either saw these are all the media outlets in New York, or you saw that this is a black owned media outlet and they cover black stuff. And so, but it's really important, especially when you're the subject of an interview, that you understand what that outlet covers, how they cover things, and what they like to focus on. Also look to see what some of their more popular stories are, and what is that line, that thread through all those stories that seems to resonate with readers. So it's about you prepping yourself through creating your bio, and also about you prepping for the interview by researching that outlet, because an interview with a Vogue magazine is going to be very different than an interview with a hair magazine. The hair magazine is going to get into more technical questions. A Vogue magazine will be asking in general about your life trajectory. A local paper is going to ask it in the context of what you're doing in Brooklyn or wherever it is that you live. So understand what that outlet's focus is, and the type of stories that they cover. That's the second thing that you want to do. And the third thing that you definitely want to do is ask yourself a couple of potential questions that you think that they might be asking you, so that you can have, some nice scripted answers for them. And then finally, it's really important that you exude authenticity during the interview. It really comes across in the way that the writer ends up writing the story and telling your story based off of your own authenticity during the interview. So I prefer interviews. Sometimes, some of the best interviews I've had end up diverting from the original topic a little bit, and they become more about shaping the human being that we're interviewing, which makes for a better story overall. So people are really attracted to people are moved by emotions more than they're moved by facts.
That's true.
And so you can lead people to facts through tapping into their emotions. So as opposed to leading people to be emotional about you through facts. It's just a good practice to open yourself up and be vulnerable, and talk about, and readers like to see themselves in. Doesn't matter what your background is. You can be like yourself. Your background is Haitian. Mine is from the South. Originally, my family's were African American. Initially I might think, well, her background is totally different than mine because she comes from another country and she speaks, but no, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make connective tissues and connective threads between each other, and that's what you want for the reader. So you want to focus on the things that are common human topics and emotions and experiences, and that's how you get a person to connect with you. Not only just the interviewer will connect with you better if you take that approach, but also the reader or the viewer if it's a broadcast interview, or even the listener. So it's really about focusing on your humanity and even your vulnerability, your struggle. A lot of times everybody in life has those common experiences: struggle, trying to develop themselves, questioning how they do things. So that's the best advice that I can give in terms of, for anybody giving an interview, whether you're a braider or not.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, I heard it. So I believe those was four.
Was it 4? Okay, great.
I believe it was bio, the short version, long version. Second was um, know your outlet.
Mm-hmm. Know the outlet,
Third,
research them. Mm-hmm.
third was ask yourself questions.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and then the fourth was to be as, I guess, transparent or
And authentic. Yeah.
as possible.
As possible.
But I love that because when you were speaking about being authentic and knowing, as even as a reporter or interviewer, sometimes the goal, the direction of the interview itself sometimes kind of like diverts a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I love allowing spirit to kind of like lead the conversation. So it's just organic and it's not like, okay, now next question. Like it's more of like, okay, let's see how it segues into the next one. But also still kind of like building a conversation uh,
Yes.
so we can get to know who the person is behind the questions. Uh,
Yes.
and the one asking the questions because I'm like, oh, I I learned a lot. When I initially met you, you had braids.
Yes.
So it like I was like, oh, she has braids. Of course. I'm like, all right, yes. Okay, so it made sense. Just like, okay, look at the braids. And then when I met you again, I'm like, wait, you have locks? Like I was like
Confused.
so confused. But then, it's amazing what, we do, especially if you have like fine locks that you can kind of like work with it in your braids. But I mean, you definitely had me. I'm like,
Yeah.
um,
I
hey,
I too was a braider. I went to my undergrad, I went to the University of Illinois, and there were a lot, I'd probably say it was about 15% people of color at the university. It was mostly white. But when I say people of color, I mean Black folks,
mhm.
because there's a lot of Asians and quite a few Latinos. But in terms of Black folks, it was maybe 10 to 15% of us. And I was one of 2 braiders on the entire campus. When I tell you that everybody was knocking on my door, and this was in the 90s, this was in the late 90s. So it was like, box braids, poetic justice. I was doing it all. And so what I love about us is not only our creativity, but that with our hair, we can create anything. We can shape a building on top of our head if we want to with our hair. And so I when I had before I locked, I was just, wearing my natural hair. Well, I locked for 20 years. And
Okay.
then I cut my locks off and I decided I wanted to wear my natural hair. And then I started putting braids in and then wearing it natural and then braids. And then I was like, you know what? Every time I went to wash my hair, it would lock up again. I'd end up ripping it out, trying to comb it out. This went on for 3 years of me because it had been locked for 20 years and it kept trying to lock up every time it got wet. So I was like, I'm just gonna let it lock back. And but I wanted the versatility that I had with the braids. So I figured out how to braid over the locks. They're the braids end up being kind of chunky, but it's okay. It still works out.
I didn't even know you were a braider, but I understand because braiding is something that has kept like Black folks, like sustained. Like, especially throughout school, throughout college, high school, I was give me your money, I'm doing your hair.
Yes.
So it was definitely something that's sustainable. And we didn't back then, I didn't see it as a career. It was like a little hustle. Like, let me just
Yeah. It was just a side hustle for me.
yeah, there you go. See, look, we are
But it made me extra money, it's so time consuming. And I know people who get their hair braided know that it's time consuming, but it's so time consuming. And really at a certain point, it really isn't worth the money we charged, but we do it out of love. So most braiders are doing it because they understand that women to get in a woman's head it's an honor when a woman allows you to get in their hair because those are their antennas. So we see it almost as, I don't want to call it a public service, but almost like, okay, I'm going to create your crown for you, sis. I know you're trusting me, and trusting my hands with your crown and I'm going to create this for you. So half of it becomes out of love. And me, us being in the cornfields during school and no braiders in sight, I knew that, my sisters needed to feel good. And so that it was almost about me helping them feel good and hooking them up. I mean, I must have charged at the time maybe $45 every time I did it. You were 40? Yeah.
$40.
Yeah. Every time I did it, I was totally undercharging, but it was really because, all right, okay, I did it. I always braided my little sister's hair, both my sisters who are under me, my cousins. I was always braiding their hair because it was, in our community, there's the braider. You know what I'm saying? There's a person that hooks the family up, their hair up, and that was me. And so I felt that's was my responsibility. And so, and it extended on to college, but then after a while I was like, nah, man, I can't do this anymore. This is taking up so much time. I've got hair all over my house. And like, after a while I was like, I got to concentrate on work. And so, I don't tell many people, I braid anymore, because then they're going to be like, they don't forget that shit. They're like, when I tell a few people, all of a sudden they show up with their kids. Can you braid my daughter's hair for her graduation? She's graduating from 8th grade. Please, 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 please. Okay, I hooked them up. Can you braid? And then I was like, I'm gonna stop telling people again, because I started back braiding a little bit because I told a few people, and then I was like, let me stop telling people I braid, because that is, it's like you're setting yourself up.
Yes. Yes. And it's like people don't understand. It's like we sell ourselves short as well, because we didn't see I would see like the African shops, and I'm like, they didn't seem like it was a luxury or anything like that, like where you can actually make money. So I projected and took that on and was like, okay, when I'm charging people, like, would they say that even though I'm providing a service and I'm standing on my feet for 8, 10, 13, 15 hours and I'm hurting, but I don't think there's value. So it's also that part too, where we're just like, the value in being able to touch somebody's hair, and that luxury of them not doing it themselves, we're doing it. Like, that's something that is a convenience. And I would say it's luxury, because they want their hair down to their foot, all of this extra stuff. We're like, wait, you know. So it's like we forget to eat. Our, there's aches and pains of us. So I had to kind of like learn that too. But when we're younger, it's like, okay, um we need this thing, we need it, and we also need the money. Like, we're hustling. We like, you know what, give it to me. I'll worry about that later. But then as we start to develop like value, you like, no, all my day is gone
Yeah.
messing. You know what
You
I'm
really
saying?
can't pay enough, and you really can't pay enough for braiding, and like people will be looking at you like trying to jip you too, like $120. I'm like, it should be 250, and they'd be like, it's like, you have no idea what this takes to what it does to the fingers, what it does to like your back, your legs, all of that. Just like you said, you don't stop to really eat, and your whole entire day is gone. So your day is gone with their day is gone, but your day is gone too. And so it's a lot. So my hat's off to braiders. Hats totally off to braiders out there. I know that at a certain point, it's not always for the money, it's for the love and for the care that you're giving to the community.
Right. It's
Mhm.
just respect us. You know what I'm saying? Show us some love and some respect, because it is love. It's a bonding experience between you and another person.
Yes.
All right, so let's go into the next question. How can braiders effectively communicate their brand and services to members of the press?
So, I think right now, what seems to be the best pathway to marketing yourself is social media. I'm not a huge lover or fan of social media, to be honest with you. And it's just for personal reasons, but from just a pure pragmatic standpoint, social media is free marketing. Come on, you guys. you don't know if you were around in the 90s or early 2000s before social media was a thing. Most people couldn't even afford to market themselves. Most people were out there handing out flyers, and that was what they had to do. Like even when I started my company, handing out flyers, it was that, and there was no place. And if you just did not have the budget for advertising and marketing is way beyond anything that you can even imagine as a single individual. So you have to kind of rethink and look at social media as something other than what it is. A lot of times people look at it as a popularity contest. You can't look at it like that. You have to look at it as a tool and a marketing tool that's free. And you have to look at yourself as this genius marketer that's going to, design this campaign for yourself and try different things. You can't just put your photos up and think that it's just going to fly. You have to come up with creative ways to reach the public. One of the things that's most effective is people understanding your personality, because when you have so much noise out there right now, the internet is full of voices. It's a chorus that you can't even like chop through. You can't slice through. So you have to do, very unconventional things to stand out. But the one thing that does usually is most effective is people seeing you and your personality. That may have nothing to do with you as a braider, but that makes you stand out. If they can hear you speaking, talking, seeing what you're doing, seeing your lifestyle, even hear your opinion about how you braid, like you need to tell your audience why you are a special braider, because you've got 1,000,001 braiders out there. And Black folks, to be honest with you, we kind of come with the braiding gene. It comes through us. It comes through our fingers, through our African ancestry. We have that. A lot of people aren't braiding who can braid, and they don't know that. So we are braiders, we are creators, we're artists. So you've got 1,000,000 people who, if they're not doing like, weave hairstyles or lace front wigs, or we can do hair. And so you've got 1,000,001 hair folks out there, salon folks out there. What's going to make you stand out? It's going to be you. And you have to identify to yourself first, why am I worthy of being looked at apart from everybody else? What makes me different? And so find out what it is. And you can even start demonstrating a technique that you use, through video, just a little clip of it, and then show the before and after results. Something special that you do while you're braiding, something special that you offer your customers. You maybe each one can, when they come in, you offer them a little glass of champagne, and that be your thing. You have to make yourself stand out, and it has to be in real time as a real, person. So a person knows what to expect from you. They know how to, like, I associate this braider with this. I associate them with someone who is going to tell me jokes because they're super funny. If you're a person that has a really funny personality, you might show yourself on video saying some funny, smack while you're braiding somebody's hair each time. Like, show it every time, even if it's only a 1-minute clip. So you first need to identify why you're special, because if you don't think you're special and you don't know what it is, then no one else is going to buy it. No one else is going to know, and no one else is going to buy it. So first identify what makes you special. If you don't feel like you have something special, find something. Create something that nobody else is doing, and begin to market that. And in video, people want to see your personality. Now I'm saying all of this, and I am like, if you go to my page, Zawadi Morris, I don't talk. And I'm saying, and I am telling you guys this. People tell me all the time, why do you talk? Show us your personality. Like, we want to see you on camera. And I'm like, I am not talking. And it's not that I'm shy. It's just that I come from old school. Like, you ain't getting in my business. And so the result is, me as a person, I don't necessarily, I don't have the biggest following, and they don't necessarily check in as much because I'm kind of boring. But I do know what works. And as a person that did PR for 13 years and then has been a journalist for another 16 years, I do know what works, and I do know what doesn't work. And I know what I'm doing wrong, but it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, you have your whole press.
I've got the BK reader. That's all I care about. Like, as long as the BK reader is popping, I'm fine. But my personal page, don't go there and expect to be like wowed.
Oh, I got you to speak on here. So the auto braids, we got you speaking. So that's good. Okay, so let me go into the next one. What, oh, this one's good. What are some common misconceptions that members of the press may have about braiding services, and how can braiders address this misconception?
Are you asking me that as a braider or as a what?
As I guess as see, you are both. I didn't
I
really.
know I'm a journalist who knows how to braid but tries to keep that a secret. Um, um, I don't know about misconceptions about braiders. That would be That's an interesting actually talking point and conversation. I don't know if I could tell you that. It's been so long, and now I just do it as a favor for friends and their kids. And I think that a lot of times, well, I can say this. I think when you tell people you're a braider, they're thinking that you really don't have a job. I think that they assume that you don't have any skills. So you've resorted to braiding.
Mm,
And so, I think that that's so wrong. I think, like I said, braiding is a gift and a service that braiders are offering our community. And we have whole lives behind that. As you can see, I'm a journalist and people wouldn't know that I braid, but I do it as a gift. And so when people decide to make their life braiding, like I go to a braider, even though I braid, and she knows I braid. So she tries to do really good with my hair too, because she knows I'm a braider. But I have a braider that I go to, and I give her so much love and respect because she blocks off her entire afternoon. She's got two kids. I go to her house. She's got two kids who she's trying to, young kids who she's trying to, keep straight while she's braiding with me. And she's giving me her time. And I understand that, she could be doing anything else. My braider's name is Thema. I don't know if you know her. Amazing, 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 amazing braider. And she is, just from talking to her, she's so smart and talented and well versed in so many things, but she has decided to braid because it gives her comfort, joy. She sees it as she's making women feel beautiful. People have that misconception that they're doing it because they need money, but you're doing it because you want to be a part of making Black women beautiful. Like, people don't consider that. You want to help. You want to use your creative and artistic talent, because you're artists too. You want to use your artistic talent in making a person feel beautiful. And so I think people make a lot of assumptions about braiders, that they, that's all they can do, and that's what they no, that's not true. And you just said it yourself. You could have gone to journalism school. There's so many things you could have done, but you chose this route. Why did you choose to be a hairstylist?
I I chose it. I was running from it all my life. Like I was doing the aunties, the kids, my brother's friends. Like I was like, I'm just done with this. Like I don't want it. I'm gonna go work here. I'm gonna work, and honestly, it kept on calling me. Like I had developed like a painless technique, and I just got so like mad at so many braiders who were like ripping people hair out, and I just was like, okay, let me braid. Let me just one less person that has like pain. And then that became like one of the sparks. And then it was just like, okay, I'm good at this. And then it became therapeutic, even for myself.
Yes.
I got to talk to people.
Yes.
I got to fly out and travel. Like it was just like, okay, the freedom in braiding kind of spoke to me, as well as the healing.
Yeah.
So it was just like building friendships, bringing family. Like, my clients would be there like, oh, so you come into the, like, and I'd just be like, wait,
You coming to the barbecue?
yeah. And
Family reunion?
I'm like, so we family now? Like it's kind of hard to separate your client from like friends and family, because you in their head all day,
Yes.
every month or every 2 months. And you're also helping them. They're talking to you. I learned about their business. We're sharing business ideas. So
Yes.
it becomes like community, and just it's fun.
Yes.
Like it's fun.
Yes.
After a while I'm hurting, but it's just like okay. But just braiding, and then also turning the braids into the art, like on, just like lasting
You
art.
took it to the next level, Karen. And that was the reason why I was like, look, this is an art form. And you literally made it an art form. And you showed how it's an art form. And I was like, this is the most unique. I love it. This girl is, if I don't, and see, I'm also greedy. I'm like, if I don't cover this, somebody's gonna get the story first, and I'm gonna be mad. So I'm always trying to get stories first, especially when it comes to like my community. I'm like, I'm not trying to have some other paper that's not Black owned cover my community. So I saw this and I was like, I got to get the story now.
Well, I was like, thank you, because I literally was just like, oh, people like this. It was just me kind of like getting out of my head and taking whatever I had in my head and throwing it out there and getting
Yeah.
it out, because if I didn't, I would just probably burst or regret it if I didn't. And I kind of like wowed myself with any piece that I challenged myself to create. And then when people was like, do you have stuff to showcase? I'm like, I think I do. Like, and I'm like, oh, I actually have. um,
Yep.
but when you're, like you said, creatives, and you're just like in your head that you create and forget, like you're just like, okay, let me do something else, and being able to make something with your own hands um is a marvel in itself. And as braiders, we do that all the time.
Yes.
And then, to do something like that is also to show people that braids are beautiful, and it is not just this one dimensional thing. Like it has so many different things that you can do and create with it.
Yeah.
So
And I see your thumbprint too. It's like people think braids like, oh, one person braid or another person. No, every braider has their own thumbprint. Like I know what your braids look like. I can see, your braid, they are consistent. They look consistently like Karen Tenor's braids when whether they're an artistic display, like a sculpture or something that you set up, whether they're clothes, you make items of clothes, or if if it's on your head. I see your thumbprint. And so, and braiders have to acknowledge that as well. You have your braids look their own unique way. And you are so fortunate that you were able to, you know, identify that one differentiation that you have from everybody else that sets you apart. And that's your ability to create art out of braids, and, to create retail clothing and those types of things out of braids. But even if you hadn't done that, you just mentioned something else that perked in my head immediately. And you said that you came up with a painless way to braid. And that's a story in of itself. And if you were on social media and you weren't creating art, you could actually market yourself as someone that can do painless braids, because you can't underestimate how many people are tenderheaded. And so people who want it really bad to get braids, but they're so afraid because they're tenderheaded. And being able to market that is huge. So I just want to let all braiders know to identify what it is that you do that's special, that you can kind of hone in on, just kind of stick to that, and let people know that this is my identity as a braider. And braiders can have thousands of different identities. It's possible.
no, we don't need to live in a box. Like, who boxes are not comfortable. So
Nope.
okay. So okay, I guess we're gonna get close to the end of this. Oh, wait, I think you already touched on that. So it was about how can braiders leverage social media to build relationships with members of the press? But I feel like you touched on that with the social media. Um, Not with relationships with the press, but I think it's just gaining visibility within the industry about like um making campaigns and telling your story and just kind of like showcasing what you do and your personality.
Yes.
Persona. Haha.
Yeah.
Okay, and now this one would be
And also, if you're a really good braider, find an influencer. They can even be white. and offer to braid their hair for free.
Hmm. So with that, I did I won't mention her name, but she's Colombian, but she has a lot of curls, right? But to the eye, people will be like, who's this white girl, right? So I did her hair, we worked together, I did her hair, and they were like, now Karen, like I got good press, but I got bad press about it. Like it was just like, now who is this one rocking these braids? And it was just like I braid hair, right? Like I was just like braid all textures. I braid hair, and she
Right.
had a lot of curls. Like her hair was naturally big.
Right.
She just didn't want to deal with it, so she wanted the braids, and I was like, I had did it.
How did
Um,
it turn out?
it turned out really good. Like I know I was tired because it was so much hair. Plus their texture, it's like hard because it
Slippery.
comes
Yeah.
exactly. So it was just like parting and making sure there's a lot of clips to separate. I don't use gel.
Mhm.
So that's also something that it was just kind of like I'm not putting certain products on the person's hair because I know how it would
Yeah.
strip, the
Yeah.
moisture. But it turned out really good. And then we did a crochet of similar to her texture, which people didn't realize it was a crochet. It was her, and it was in her hair. But it was fun to
That was
do.
fun. Don't listen to folks saying, now Karen, don't do that. You're an artist. You don't create artists don't just create for a certain audience. You create for the world. And so don't limit yourself ever and feel that you have to. I have preference in terms of the types of textures of hair I like to braid. Like I really prefer really nappy hair. I prefer like really coarse. I prefer braiding that, but I don't limit myself. I remember in sixth grade, specifically when it got out that I braided, all the white girls during lunchtime would line up and ask me to put two cornrows in the back of their hair. They go home with two cornrows and felt so cute and would come back the next day with their hair washed and ask me. So I ended up doing white girls' hair, braiding their hair for like my entire sixth grade during lunch. And for a brief moment, it just made me popular because I was like the hair braider person. But but yeah, don't ever feel like you have to limit yourself to, a gender or anything, a gender or race or anything.
This is true. See, good tips.
Mhm.
Okay, do you have okay. Do you have any favorite tools or resources that can help that have you used that helped you in your career or your journey?
Um, tools and resources. Well, I have certain habits. I don't know about tools necessarily. I'd have to kind of like drill down about what aspect of business that, we're talking about, but I keep a daily journal and record like in the beginning of every morning and sometimes in the evening. I have mine here already for Tuesday, a running list of what I'm doing for Tuesday. I'm sorry, not Tuesday, Thursday. But every morning I do a checklist of all the things that I need to accomplish for that day. And I even put it by hour. I say from 6 to 7, I'm doing this. From 7 to 8, I'm doing this. From 8 to 8:30, I'm doing this. Like I map out my entire day every day so that even if I don't hit all my goals, I hit more than I would have if I hadn't been making a list. So I do lists. I'm really, you know, lists are important, and developing habits that are consistent that you can do every day. Is consistency is what's going to make you successful, and it doesn't matter what job you're in, especially if you're an independent contractor. Being consistent, even if it's something you don't like to do, whether it's working out every morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, but consistency is the key to success. It's not always skill. I think I heard one time that it's you do something. I know that you build a habit after 21 days if you do it for 21 days. And I know you build expertise after doing it. I think I heard 300 days you can become an expert in something that you did not have expertise or any knowledge in before. If you do it every single day, whether that's doing 50 sit-ups, you can become an expert at doing sit-ups if you're taught, the correct way. If you do it for something like 300 days, I've got to, I don't, I could be just pulling that number out of the air, but it's in the hundreds. But understand that doing something over and over again and being consistent with it, whether or not you started out as someone who was an expert at it, you can become an expert. You can craft and create and mold your own destiny. You can decide what it is and where it is you want to be, and you can start that journey on your own. So for me, being able to run this daily newspaper, it's a daily, it's not a weekly and it's not a monthly. And when I tell people, other publishers, that I run a daily, most publishers I know, especially Black publishers, run weeklies. When I tell them I run a daily newspaper every single day for the past 10 years, they're like, how do you do it? I was like, I always tell them, I was like, well, consistency is a good practice anyway, but I've always relied on consistency to get me to where I need to go and to be successful. One foot in front of the other over and over and over again. Before you know it, you've walked 100 miles. And so you can't start that journey unless you continue and do it over and over again. So whatever you do, and if you want to become good at it, just give yourself the space and the room to grow into it and just be consistent.
I'll take that. So we got lists and consistency. Those are the tools.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So before we wrap up, I like to ask 3 fun questions at the end just to keep it up as a positive high. And the questions are, what is your favorite go-to braided style and why? Is there a book that you can recommend that would be great for any starting entrepreneur? And are there any new products, projects, or events that you would like to give us the tea on?
Okay, the first, what was that? What was the first one?
What is your favorite go-to braided style and why?
My favorite go-to braided style are back in my youth, we called them the Dookie braids, and they're like big fat box braids. And Naomi Campbell made them popular back in the 90s. And they're like 8 braids in your big long braids in your hair. And I love those because they remind me of being a little kid. And then they're also sexy, and they're flexible. You can do different things with them, but I like the big chunkies. And what was the second question?
Is there a book that you could recommend for any starting entrepreneur?
Yes, there's this book that I'm reading now. Let me see, who's the author. I'm gonna look up the author. I'm forgetting it right now. I think it's his last name is Coveney, but it's called Launch. And it's an important book in terms of it lays out a blueprint for relaunching yourself and launching your business and what it takes to be successful. So always never think that you are a business that's just, in a continuum, like, okay, this isn't going well, I'm not relaunch yourself. Relaunch yourself. And if you have to do it again in 6 months, relaunch yourself. Know that you're not the same. You're not the same person you were a year ago. So your business doesn't have to be the same. Always leave yourself open to evolving, changing, shifting, and doing what you need to do to get to where you need to go. And don't feel like you have to lock your own self in a box. So I'm looking up the author of Launch now.
I mean,
It's on my Kindle. I should probably look on my Kindle. Oh, his name is Jeff Walker, and the book is called Launch. And what was the third question?
do you have any new products, projects, or events that you would like to give us the tea on?
New products, projects, or events. Well, I can't really speak on it right now, but I am am in the process what they call pre-seed. I'm developing a new news product that's never been done before. And it's going to include AI, and it's going to have to do with news, and it is going to rock not only the country but the world.
Ooh.
It's going to be on some global. It's going to be some global-ish, and yeah. So I've kept it pretty much under wraps. I've been actually ideating it and thinking it through and changing it and evolving what it is over the past 2 years. So it's not a new idea. It's one that I've been really, really massaging and prepping. And now I got seed funding for it to build the prototype. And then once I have the prototype done, then I go and pitch it for actual venture capital funding. And so the venture capital pitching will probably come around the fall. The seed funding is paying for the MVP, or the most valuable product, and the prototype this summer so it's in development. So there's something that's, you may not, if you don't know me from BK Reader, you're going to know me from this.
Ooh, okay. I would say from Chicago to Brooklyn, like that mentality is like, we're gonna win.
Yes.
So innovate and just make the world better. So you would consider this basically going into the tech world?
It's media tech. It is definitely media tech. And tech, listen, braiders, come up with integrate what you're doing with tech. Figure it out. Be the first. Figure out some tech-ish, okay? And you can. Tech can marry with everything. If you think it can't, then you're limiting yourself and you're missing out on an opportunity. Figure out how tech can integrate with what you do. And even if that is, since AI is in existence, figure out how you can use AI to maybe model like an app that people can actually say what they want their hair to look like, and it shows up on your app. And then you send it to braiders, or find out what braider can do it and they pick it up or something like that. But let's get on this media bandwagon, y'all. Let's get this money. Okay.
You heard it here. Look, I got my thing cooking. I got some ideas within tech too.
Oh yeah.
But no, thank you so much, Zawadi Morris, for sitting and talking with me. Like, I feel like I know you so much better. I thought I did. I'm like, nah, I didn't know. I didn't know it was PR, braider, all of that. And just even where I thought you were from Brooklyn, and the fact that you have traveled here, and you are now a Brooklynite, basically. So it doesn't even matter where you came from, is where you are.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. My listeners, how can they find you and support you?
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Karen. You can find me at bkreader.com. Please follow me on bkreader.com, or follow BK Reader. We have a daily newsletter that comes out at 3:00 every single day. Sign up for our newsletter. Follow us on social at BK Reader. On Instagram, we're at the BK Reader. On Facebook, we're at Brooklyn Reader. So follow us on all the socials. That's the best way to support me. You can also send a donation if you want. We got a little subscribe and donation button on the site if you want to do that, because we do offer our newspaper every single day to the community for free, but it is unfortunately not free to run and to manage. It costs a lot of money. So reader donations go a long way, and they mean a lot. So you can help out that way. And if you want to contact me, you can reach me at info at bkreader.com.
Okay, there you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen.
Yes, and if y'all haven't read BK Reader, please go out and go listen, support, follow all of what Zawadi just said, and more, because you won't be disappointed. Like, I've learned so many things happening in Brooklyn off of just following BK Reader. So thank you again. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And to my audience, thank you again for listening. I am your host, Karen Tenord, and you have been listening to Zawadi Morris of BK Reader. Have a good one.
Bye.
Listen, such an amazing interview. To get more info, go to kaidetres.com/podcast. podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you got a lot from today. Be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and show back up. Okay, see you in a bit.